Welcome everyone. Thanks for stopping by. I've got a few cards for you today. I am using these adorable Mother's Day gnomes from Paper Rose Studio. They come in a pack of perforated sheets and they're absolutely gorgeous. So for my first card, I'm going to be using this Leafy Garden embossing folder. I just thought that was a really pretty backdrop for that gnome swinging away on his swing. And I chose not to use any ink on the background. I just wanted it to stand out on its own and make the gnome the focal point. So you can see I just went around my card base itself and put a little purplish ink down. Now I've freestyle cut these clouds. Those are clouds, guys. They're not waves. But if you have cloud dies, of course, go ahead and use those. But I'm going to make an acetate pendulum now so that my little gnome can swing away on my card. So to do that, you don't need a die. I'm just tracing around a circular object. You don't want this circle to be too big, so this glue bottle seemed to be a good size. It was a multi-matte media bottle, but you know, Nouveau drops or pops bottles, all of those would work. And then I'm just drawing two vertical lines down the bottom. I didn't want this part to be terribly wide because it may show a little bit on the card. So I'm doing a fairly narrow vertical arm on the end of it. And then I just cut that out. Now, I should have erased or used some alcohol to take off the Sharpie marker. I do it later, but this is when I would do it. If I wasn't making a video, this is when I would have done it. But now I am cutting out the inside circle. I've used a paper punch for that, and it's a fairly big circle, as you can see. And I'm taking a little piece of foam tape, double-sided foam tape, and I'm cutting with that same circular punch. So now I've got 2 layers of that foam tape in that circular shape, and that's what is going to hold that pendulum down to the card. So there you can see it. And now I'm going to stick that onto my card front. Now, really, if I wasn't making a video, I don't know what happens when I make a video, guys, but I'm thinking about too many things. But really, I should have stuck my card front down at this point, but I didn't. So at any cost, I put a little bit of glue down, and then I stuck that foam dot. And I just wanted to be sure the foam dot would stick, so that's why I added the extra glue. Now off camera I cut another circle using that same glue bottle, and this circle is out of cardstock, so I'm just gluing that over top of the foam dot, and that makes sure that that pendulum is sandwiched between the card front and that cardstock circle, so it won't come off. So now I'm gluing my card front onto my card base, and now I can figure out how long that pendulum arm has to be, and I just trimmed off what I didn't need. Now, I like to add a penny to the back of my images because it gives them a bit of weight and they will swing much better. So we don't use pennies anymore here in Canada, but I have a little stash, a little collection of them, and I just use them for my cards. It would have been much easier to stick the penny to the pendulum because then you don't worry about the excess red line tape being exposed and sticking things down. You can just stick your gnome right over top of that penny. So here I have to realign my gnome and make sure that that red line tape is not going to stick anything else down behind. Now I decided that for the clouds I wanted a little bit of color in them, so I'm just using a bit of light blue ink to just add an edge of color there. And for the top layer I've added 2 strips of scrap cardstock just to give it a bit of dimension. And so then I can line this up and trim off those edges and make sure it will fit. And now I've got some more double-sided foam tape that I'm doubling up. So I'm just folding these together and pressing them down. So now I've got 2 layers of foam tape, and I can go all around that cloud layer. You want that height and dimension away from the pendulum so it can swing freely. So I'm going around the edges with this, and now you can see that little gnome will swing way too far to the left and the right, so we have to put bumpers. So I'm putting him as far left as I want him to go, and putting a little bumper of double-sided foam tape beside that pendulum so that it won't swing any further than that. And I was just making sure the clouds would cover that. And here again, now I've got him as far to the right as I want him to go. And I'll just put a little bumper of double-sided foam tape to the right of that pendulum. And then he's only going to swing between those two pieces of foam tape, so he won't go swinging wildly. So now I've removed the release paper from the foam tape around the clouds, and I can just cover up that mechanism now. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple, easy, interactive card to make. So all I'm doing now is adding my sentiments to the bottom. I put a few pearl beads down there just for a little more interest. And then I've fussy cut this little butterfly from the Rainbow Butterfly Collection, I think it's called. And I've got it glued just in the middle, and I'm popping it up at the top. And there it is. It's really fun to play with. Okay, so I've got another card to share with you. I was having so much fun with these gnomes. I could have kept on for hours and hours with these. But I've used the Mother's Day gnomes again, and I'm using the Chunky Script Happy Birthday stamp set, and I just stamped that in yellow and clear heat embossed it. I've made those daisies from the Alana flower. I just used the smallest petal there and the center. And then for the stalks or the stems, I've used the Etched Blooms 4 die set. And that's the flourish circle that I've got around the outside of my circle. And I just did a bit of ink blending in the background there. So a very simple card front, because the inside is going to be a pop-up mechanism. So I've got the wonky picket fence there. I've cut 4 of those, and I've cut 2 of these Tree of Loves out of brown cardstock. I've got some scrap, fairly bright green cardstock there. Those are the same daisies that I had made on the front, and I picked out 2 of these gnomes to use. So I've just cut 2 scraps from that green card. I think they were 5.5 inches wide by 1.25 inches tall, but they should be the same size. We're going to make an inside pop-up mechanism here. So I'm taping these together, just with the low-tack tape, because I'm going to cut these into grassy, not hills, but just a grassy border. This will go in behind that picket fence, so you're not really going to see it. So it doesn't matter if you're not great at this or not. You can see it's just a hilly shape there. But it should be the same size. Now along the straight edge, I'm scoring at 1/4 inch in, and I do that on both of these. But because this is an inside pop-up mechanism, you are going to want to fold these fold lines in opposite directions, if that makes sense. They should be folded so they face each other. So you always want the tops to line up, but now these folds will go facing each other on the bottom. So I hope you can see that here. I'm going to line these up again. So the tops are the same now. They're facing the same direction, cut the same way, but the bottoms are facing inwards towards each other. So slightly different folds there. Now I'm just going to glue these little picket fence pieces together. And I do that for the front and the back. Those daisies, it would have been easier to put those in at this point in time, but I didn't. I am now going to glue this fence to my grassy backdrop. And I'm just putting glue on the bottom of those fence pieces and sticking that right down to the back, to the grassy part. And I do that for both the front and the back. And I'm sure you can see how it would have been easier to put those little daisies popping through the fence at this point rather than later when I had to sort of wiggle them in. But now inside my card, I am lining up the fence along that bottom fold, and I'm just figuring out the placement of my tree. And then I just need to put some glue on the bottom of that tree. You don't want the flap to be glued down, so I'm removing the flap and then just lining that up again with where I want that tree to stand inside the card. So that is the front of the card that's at the top. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the top branches of the tree that will go along the back. You definitely do not want to be gluing the bottom of these trees together, and you will see why in a little bit, because that is actually what allows this to pop up when it's opened up. So here the two trees are just glued at the very top. And you can see there they open at the bottom. So now I'm going to glue the top of the fences together. So this is the back fence, and I will glue it to the front one. And I'll also put a little bit of glue on the base of that tree just so it sticks to the grassy parts, and that will help it to open up. So they're just lining everything up. And you'll see in a minute how this pops open at the bottom, but that is what allows this card to stay open flat. So now I've got both those flaps opened up, and I'm going to just put glue on the back flap, and then I will line this right up with that fold line on the card. So that's the top of the card I'm gluing this down to, the front of it. And I'm just lining up the edges of that flap with that fold line. Just really pressing it down. And you can see it's only the back that's being glued here. If I lift that up, there you go. So just the back flap is being glued to the front of the card. And now I can put glue on this front flap and fold the card and just really press it. Make sure that glue picks up. And then when you open it, you'll have this magical little pop-up that has this triangular shape, and that actually will help that card to stay open when the recipient gets it. So I've added in the daisies now, which would have been easier had I done that earlier. And I can now glue these little gnomes down. So I'm just going to put a bit of glue on the bottom of this gnome and then put him in, tucked in between the daisies there. Now you'll see I did have to prune that tree a little bit. It was kind of poking him in the head. So I did some surgery on the tree and just removed that one little branch that was right there. And now I can tuck in the second gnome, attach that, and I'm just putting them at the front. You know, you could tuck them in behind the fence. I just didn't want to have them covered up. So this is the final card. So when you open it, they all pop up. I've just added that sentiment, and I added some of the hearts to that tree of love at the top, just to make it look a bit leafy. But it's so fun. Those gnomes are just adorable. Quite a fun little card to give to somebody. Now there is a bit of dimension to it, mostly because I put those daisies in. But it will open up and it will stay open, so it just will sit down flat like that. So I've got one more card to share with you. I have used this inky color paper. I used the 6x6 sheet, and you can see I've used the tree one and I have foiled the tree. Now that one was a gold foil. It's the reactive foil. It's not the hot foil that I used, but I'm going to show you how I did it. You need to use a glue that will dry tacky, and so the scrapbook.com glue does, the Cosmic Shimmer Flake and Glitter glue. These gels will work, and you could use a paintbrush to paint them on. I think the Tombow Mono glue dries tacky. I think that would be another choice. But you can see I'm just going to cover the tree with the glue, and I'm not being terribly careful. You can sort of pick out what you want to cover, what you don't want to cover. You don't have to do all the branches, you can just do some of them. Could be you want to do the landscape, and that would work too. So I'm just going quickly along, putting glue down, and then the hardest thing is you have to set it aside and let the glue dry. And so it's going on a very milky color here, but when it dries, it's going to be completely translucent, and you want it to get to that point. So here is how it looks when it's really fully dry. So this was a few hours later, I believe. And now for this example, I thought I would use some gilding flakes. So I'm using some Cosmic Shimmer gilding flakes. This one is Autumn Blaze, and I love this one. It's got all these beautiful reds and oranges and pinks. And then, oh no, that was Red Blaze, and this one here is Autumn Leaves. and it's got a few more blues and greens mixed in it. So I thought at the base of the tree that would be pretty. So I'm just putting this one down along the bottom of the tree, down where that bluey ground is. You just put them on and then you just brush them on. And because that glue is so tacky, it just picks up those gilding flakes right away. And you just brush and smooth off what's excess. And here I'm using the red blaze flakes, and you can see they're quite small, some of those pieces, but it works. That glue is so tacky, all those little dusty bits will adhere. So just lightly brushing those on over top of it, just to make sure they're sticking to the glue. And then once they really are sticking, I use a bit more force and really brush off the excess and tap it off and put it all back in the jar. And there it is all finished, and I really think that's pretty. So for my card, I chose to use this gold foiled one. That is mink gold foil that I used on this one. I trimmed down the inky color paper to fit my card. And I've also cut this birthday sentiment. Now, I cut it from gold foil, but it didn't show up amongst the trees. So I tried one shadow layer of vellum, and I still didn't feel like that was quite good enough. It wasn't showing up well enough and standing out from the tree. So I cut a second layer of vellum just to see if that would make it any better. And I like that much more. I felt like you could read it from there. So in order to attach that, I'm just putting glue on the back of the birthday sentiment, gluing it to the first layer of vellum, and then I'm gluing behind those letters and attaching that vellum layer now down to the second vellum layer. And then I could put all of that up onto my card. And this was such a quick and easy card, honestly. It came together in no time at all. I had those extra supporting sentiments that I was putting on there with it. And then I mounted that little gnome on foam tape and just put him down at the base of the tree and added those sentiments on the side. And that's the card, quick and simple. So thank you for joining me, everybody. I hope I've given you some ideas. These gnomes are absolutely adorable. Like, you will make so many cards out of them. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're having a great day. Bye.